Good afternoon, folks. Thanks for letting us spend a little bit of time with you. In honor of the 60th anniversary and 60th running of the Daytona 500, the NASCAR Hall of Fame, in conjunction with the Daytona International Speedway, wanted to bring up three of our legends who have had very significant parts in the history of the Daytona 500. Starting on the far left, a member of the 2012 class of the NASCAR Hall of Fame, Dale Inman. In the middle, of course, the King from the class of 2010, the inaugural class, Richard Petty. And from our most recent class of 2018, crew chief and car owner Ray Evernham. Our communications team also has been kind enough to put together some facts and figures about the NASCAR Hall of Fame and all the exhibits and timelines and many of the artifacts around the Daytona 500 that we have in the NASCAR Hall of Fame, along with one of our yearbooks from this year from Ray's class, and also a little memento, a magnet in that book for all of you. If you haven't gotten one of those, Kate and Regina are here and can help you with that. Richard, I want to start with you and not just talk about all your success here, but in looking back at the timeline of the Daytona 500 from when your dad won the very first one, there are so many historic moments in the history of NASCAR that happened in the Daytona 500. Your perspective on that, and how did all that happen?
I don't know. We definitely, my dad won the first race. We come down here and nobody had ever seen anything like Daytona. And it was so humongous, it was new to everybody. I had an advantage over a lot of the guys that was already running because I was just starting and I didn't have to unlearn to learn to run on the super speedway. So this was the beginning of the super speedway era. Basically, up to that time, all we had was Darlington and nobody thought about super speedway. And, we were very fortunate that my dad won the very first race. And, we've had some really good luck here. We've been in some pretty bad wrecks. I think it's all evened itself out. But the deal, again, like I've told y'all before, that, Daytona is our Super Bowl, World Series, Kentucky Derby, whatever. And it starts in the middle of winter, basically, and there's nothing else in racing going on in the world. So we get people from all over the world, looking to Daytona. And if you're fortunate enough to win Daytona, you're a winner all year long, no matter, what happens in the rest of the season. But we were fortunate enough to win a few times and go on and still have some good seasons. But we won Daytona and then I had good seasons too. So the Daytona deal will make your season. It don't necessarily break it, but it'll flat make it. So again, this is the world center of our racing as far as cup racing. So everybody points to Daytona. Even more so now maybe than they used to.
Dale, there's so much preparation that goes into this race. We talk a lot about the cars, the plate racing, but it was quite a bit different back in the day. How did you guys prepare different, or did you? Was the Daytona 500 just another race and happened to be at the first? How was the preparation similar or different than what you see today?
Well, I happened to be fortunate enough to come down when Lee won the first race, and we didn't know what we was getting into, because we'd come straight from the beach in 1958, and we was going to build a Pontiac, and then we wound up got a Oldsmobile somehow. I don't know how all that worked out, but we come down with the Oldsmobile and won a photo finish race with Johnny Beauchamp. Took about 3 days to decide, but I think Bill France stretched that out, and so, but then, of course, then Daytona grew from there on, and but you had to prepare good for Daytona. You wanted your car to look the best because that's when the pictures was taken, and most time they used them all year for that, the pictures from Daytona, and showing you new uniforms when we had uniforms, and but it's just always been special to us, and it still is. I know the first several years we come down here, we come in the tunnel over here under turn 4, and we'd come right straight to the garage and go to work and leave about dark. Heck, I didn't even know there's a lake in the place till 5 or 6 years, and and I don't know whether they made it bigger or a little, but it takes up quite a bit of space now. But it's certainly, when we first come in down here, it was certainly different from anything we'd ever seen. And, you know, like Richard said, Darlington was the biggest thing we'd ever seen. And then, of course, going back to the history of the first race, a lot of people don't know this. It was a photo finish, and there was not a caution flag thrown. And, of course, Lee was 45-year-old when he won that. So, and now, of course, you see the change in the youth we see out there in a prime example last night. But what a special event for a car lover or a race lover.
And we're fortunate to have that trophy that Lee Petty won, his shirt and his pants, and also T. Taylor Warren, who I know many of you worked with and know his checkered flag photo is a part of our archives at the NASCAR Hall of Fame. Ray, going back to kind of the first time here, kid from New Jersey, raced mostly short tracks, modifieds. Your first memory of coming into the Daytona International Speedway, and what did you think?
Oh boy, it's a lot like probably a lot of other kids. We probably shouldn't have been in the garage area where we got in, but it was we came through the tunnel there in February of 1977 was my first event through here, and we got into the garage area. It was a little bit easier to get in at that time, and I remember, you know, I've probably got a couple of Richard's autographs, and probably Dale probably want to kick me in the butt here and there because I was peeking under his cars or doing something like that. But, you know, I'll never forget, and to this day I try and come through the Turn 4 tunnel because it just gives you an unbelievable feeling coming through that corrugated tin. You know, when you're, I think at that time, you know, again, we're running Wall Stadium and places like that. You know, we had Pocono and places that we'd seen, but had never really, you know, always heard about Daytona, and you go through there, and it's just a memory that you never forget. So every time I come here, I try and go through that tunnel, and I remember standing down there in the infield and looking up at the cars going by like they were on a billboard. And you know right then and there that this is where you want to be. That's where you're working to get here. You don't know how to get here. You don't know how you're going to get there, but you know you're coming. You've got to come and race at this place, and it just has that effect on certainly on my life. And I know a lot of other young racers that have talked about the same thing, coming in there and seeing those cars go by that fast, that high in the air. It's just amazing.
Couple more questions that I've got, and we'll also take questions from anybody here in the media. Richard, 7-time winner here, by far more than anybody else. I know this may not be a completely fair question, but if you look at those 7 wins, 64, 66, 71, 73, 74, 79, and 81, which one was the most important to you in your career?
You know, it's really hard to say. We had never won a super speedway. I started basically in 1960 with the Cup Series, and we'd won a bunch of short tracks, but never anything bigger than a mile, I guess. And come to Daytona in '64 with the new Plymouth, with the new Hemi and all that, and when the biggest race there was, you know, had to be a big part of my starting my career anyway. Even though I'd run 3 or 4 years and won a bunch of races, nothing compared to Daytona. But, you know, I look back and, you know, 2 or 3 of them races we really lucked into, like the 79 race when they all crashed on the backstretch, wound up winning the race. Then there's been a couple of them that we probably should have won that we didn't. So, you know, by running that many years, it's kind of evened itself out. But, you know, I'd have to go back to, in my memory anyway, the biggest win that I think we've had was the 81 win, when we was like, you know, there was 4 or 5 cars racing for the flag and our last pit stop, and I think Bobby Allison probably had the quickest car because after we'd run a while, he could get away from the rest of the crowd, and you know, he came in, got gas and got tires. Everybody, the other 3 or 4 guys, they come in, and you know, they stopped and got tires and got gas. And Dale kept saying, just stay out, stay out, stay out. And then when the last car made the pit stop out of that crowd, then I come down pit road, and just as I come down pit road, he said, gas only. And I said, we just won this race. I mean, that was just how simple it was. And, you know, was able to go on and win the race. And, you know, that was really the twilight of my career anyway. I was going downhill pretty quick, and to come back and win the seventh race at Daytona was probably the biggest win at Daytona.
Dale, at what point during that 1981 win did you decide that you were going to do the gas only? When did that come about?
I don't know. Bobby snickered us with a very good Le Mans car and pretty well had us covered. But I remember telling Richard somewhere about halfway through the race, I said, Richard, the tires are not, they're not giving up, and just we're doing good with everything. And I said, no matter what I do at the end, just bear with me. And that's kind of the way it turned out. And the only thing about it, we figured it pretty close because we drafted most of the day, and we figured the gas mileage there at the end. And I think coming to the checkered over here, it ran out of gas about where you come into the pits. And he said he liked to broke his leg hitting the clutch, so he coasted. But it was a big day. And, of course, like he said about the 64, when we got it, the Plymouth come with a good body. It was just a natural body for a stock car. And then we got the Hemi, and we had never been able to run anything on the super speedway with the 63 Plymouth because it had a bad body and a wedge motor and all that stuff. But we come down here, and I remember we got through inspection. They messed with us about all day, and we finally went out, and he shook the car down and run about as fast as we'd run the year before. So we was all tickled to death, and we talked about it and come in the next morning and got it all ready to go out, and he'd come in and run about 13 mile an hour faster than he'd ever run. He said, we're going to have to work on this thing. Something ain't right. We was running so fast. And if you look in the cars now and the seats they got, I mean, it's unreal. And one of the big things we done, it had a bench seat, and we took the back off the right side, and we got two 2x4s and wrapped them with a army blanket and bolted him to the seat for him to lay against. That he says that was one of the big things. Of course, we done some more stuff, but he don't give nobody no credit. He does it all, so.
Well, that 64 Plymouth is one of the latest iterations on Glory Road, also along with the pole-winning car from 2001 that Bill Elliott took coming back, bringing Dodge back. Race success here with both Bill, Jeff Gordon. Any one of your races, wins or otherwise, that stand out to you?
Oh boy, Winston, you always put me in a tough spot because I'm sitting here. I'm talking about. I think I only won twice here in the 500, and I'm sitting next to a guy that have won 7 times and got incredible stories. I love to sit here and listen to the stuff myself, and I'm happy to know that my cars weren't the only one that had a little trouble getting through inspection. It went all the way back to 1964, obviously. But you always remember the first one. I think 99, and if you look at some of the pictures from 99, they're talking about how low the cars were here, but there's some shots of our car that were pretty low back then. So 99 was certainly a good competitive win. But the first one in 97, when we finished 1, 2, 3 with the Hendrick cars, and Jeff and Dale Earnhardt got together and had the tumble, and it just was one of those ones where we just didn't think we had a car that was capable of winning, and we got in a position to win. And the memories from that always being that first win, not believing, and we'd already won a championship and we'd won races, but we'd not won the Daytona 500. And when you do win the Daytona 500, there's just something about it that is special. It changes you as a stock car racer. It's some justification or in some way. And so my memory of that day was, as I said, 1, 2, 3, and Jeff winning that. And when Dale went by us on pit road with that car all smashed down from flipping over and whatnot, he gave me the finger, and I was like, I don't drive. I sit on the pit box. I don't drive it. Don't be mad at me. Go get the guy that was driving it. But those two things about that day I'll never forget.
Questions from the folks that are here? Here, and then we'll go over here to Hill.
Kenny Bruce with KennyBruce.net. Ray, you talked about Daytona when you were a kid and coming down here, and you've talked about winning the races. But the first time you came here as a crew chief, I mean, how nervous were you, or were you concerned about this is the biggest stage? We've got to perform.
You know, it's kind of funny, Kenny. You come here without a ton of expectations because you're not supposed to do good. You know, we just wanted to get here and we just wanted to finish the race and wanted to represent, you know, Mr. Hendrick and everybody. Well, we knew we had a lot to learn, and it was. I leaned on a lot of other crew chiefs and previous setups and things like that Hendrick had, and then we went out and won the 125 then the pressure was on. Then I was nervous because now the expectation was, well, heck, you know, if the car's good enough to win the 125, I better not screw up in the 500. And I did. And a lot of people don't know that, you know, but we did at one point, and we had to get on a way off strategy 2-tire deal, and that's what used to be really good about the Daytona 500. Could be pretty unpredictable with a number of cautions, and had not been for a caution at the right time that day, you know, we might have been about 20th.
Bill?
Yeah, Hill Overton, WNDB Daytona. And Dale, this is for you. A lot of people know, of course, that you won all those championships with Richard. A lot of them don't remember the '84 year when you were with Hagan Enterprises and a certain guy in the Piedmont Airlines Oldsmobile named Terry Labonte. Tell us a little bit about that experience out of Thomasville, North Carolina.
That was a Chevrolet.
It was.
In '84. You know, it was a good year, and I went with him in '83, and Terry had come, and I wasn't acquainted with Terry really, and Hagan hired me for the next year, but he was in a real bad wreck at Riverside in '82, the last race, and he got hurt pretty bad, and we went through the started the '83 season. I don't know where, maybe we finished 6th down here or something, and I think it took him a while to get back up to speed, and I tell him that too. But I think once we went back to Riverside and he went through the spot where he wrecked, I think he got some confidence back and everything. And of course, '84 things just fell in place for us, and we wound up winning the championship. Of course, we didn't do it to the last lap at Riverside, which was nerve-wracking because it was rain delayed and it was dark when it was all over, but it was a big year. But one of the boys in the shop the other day asked me, said, where was you at in the picture of Richard's 200th win at Daytona? I said, well, I happened to be on my way to the 8th championship with another team. And I said, you got any more smart aleck answers and questions? But it was a good year for Richard, and it was big for him. And, of course, I was down here, and we celebrated after the race with Ronald Reagan. And, you know, just so many big memories. Of course, I don't guess there's ever been a day that me and Richard went around a race car.
Okay, we'll go over here to Lewis, and back here and over here.
Louis Frank of Reuters. Ray, carrying on Kenny's topic, so how did your stress level change here as owner and now as consigliere to Hendrick?
Well, I'm actually retired again. I've retired from Hendrick for the second time, so now I'm just like a cheerleader. You know, I go around and pat everybody on the back and shake my head up and down. Even though I did want to walk into the NASCAR trailer and make some suggestions about left rear quarter panel today, but I refrained from doing that. You know, these guys can tell you, right? They've been in the championship hunt way more than everybody else. Once you realize you can do it, the stress gets a little bit harder because you're digging in the details, and that competition level's coming up and up and up. You know, it's no different really than that old gunfighter story. There's always somebody coming that's going to be quicker and faster, and you just got to work hard to stay up on top there. And I knew that having Jeff Gordon in the seat, had the best guy of that time, you know, in the Hendrick cars and engines, the responsibility fell a lot on crew chief, team manager. You know, back then, and it wasn't really 60 people either. You know, I think there was there might have been 19 or 20 of us in our shop full time. Obviously, you know, we had Hendrick cars and engines, but you know, a lot of that, I think you handle that stress even better, maybe, or a little easier than the guys can handle it today, because just about, you know, a bigger percentage of your outcome is in your hands. You've got a lot more control on it because it's in your hands. And right now, I think that crew chiefs and guys like that just don't have as much control over their own destiny as we did. So I really, to this day, I feel like I was in the sweet spot as far as crew chiefing. Now, car owner, I can tell you that was stressful from the day I signed those papers at Dodge till the day that I decided to retire, because that was one of those ones that I just wasn't ready for. And I was fortunate enough, again, to have people around me that helped me through business and helped me do all things. I thought it was the simple. I thought it was just going to be, well, I was just going to be a crew chief still, but I was just going to own everything. But it didn't it didn't work out that way. So my love is building and working on race cars.
Back here and then over here. Here.
Richard, Bubba talked about how excited you were last night after the qualifying race. Can you talk about your excitement level entering the weekend with the 43 car?
Well, yeah, everything was, again, new. Like I told you before, we moved in a new shop. We've got some new people, got a new car, got a new driver. So there was a lot of unexpected things happening. And for him, he qualified, 25th, I think. So we didn't have that fast a car. But then once the race started and stuff, he said the car handled pretty good, so he was able to keep up with the deal. And, most of the race he ran 5th or 6th, somewhere along in there, and I was tickled to death with that. I said, just stay in line, get to the checker flag, bring all 4 wheels back, and we'll be in good shape. And then there was a couple of wrecks, and he was lucky enough to get through them and still ran 3rd, and that was, to us, that's a win. Being it's a brand new team from the standpoint of, new driver, new car. So, I couldn't really expect it a whole lot more, and I don't know who was the happiest, whether it was me or him. I think he was happy just to get out of the car, after seeing all them wrecks and stuff. So it was just it was a good night for Richard Petty Motorsports, because it gave the guys that worked all winter and worked on the car. The cars, a bunch of the cars come from RCR, so it made them guys feel good too. So overall, it was a pretty good deal. Good start with us with Chevrolet, I think.
Time for 2 more, one over there and one up here.
Christian Coley, frontstretch.com, and the Motorsports News Source. This question's for all 3 of you. Dale, you kind of touched on it with the younger generations moving up into the Cup Series. The 60 years of Daytona, it's been a cycle of different young guns, and they step up and they become the veterans, and then it's always a cycle. How do you 3 feel about the future of the sport with the younger drivers that are there now?
You're the king. You can go
What's the
first.
question?
How do you feel about the future of the sport with all these
Okay.
young guns coming up? You were the
Well,
young gun of 64.
Okay, anybody that studied Cup racing since 1949 knows that, like every 10 or 12 years, we have a regrouping. I think probably the group that I came through with, Yarborough and Allison, Pearson, they probably stayed longer than anybody stayed before, and probably stayed longer than anybody's going to. So every 8 or 10 years, you start seeing a regrouping, and that's what we're going through right now. That's one reason, basically, that we looked at Bubba. He's a young guy. He started out. He's run with a bunch of these guys that are coming into Cup racing now. So from that standpoint, we see a new generation of people coming in as far as drivers are concerned. And, where we go from there, I think that in the long run that you're getting a lot of, over a period of time, we're losing people my age that's not coming to the races anymore. The deal is getting new people in. And I feel like that a new crowd of people coming in, the guys that use the computers and get on ESPN or whatever them things are. Get on all that stuff, talk to each other on the show pictures, all that stuff. So I think that'll regenerate our form of racing, because the old guys and stuff didn't get into that kind of stuff, and again, we got to get a new generation of people, and I think this is the way to do it.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think me and Richard's ever been young, but they didn't let him run until he was 21 years old. I don't know where people know that or not. So he turned 21 July the 2nd, 1958, and like 7 or 8 days later, we went and run his first race in Columbia, South Carolina. So he didn't start till he was 21. So And I guess there's a guy in the race now that's younger than that in the 500, you know. So it's big time, and it's certainly a different world, you know. And the coverage, this race right here is probably known all over the world, except parts of the world that's not civilized. So it is so much, so big, you know. Of course, level cross is civilized. We know that, and It's come a long way, and I think the younger generation is stepping up, you know. And like I said, Lee won the first race down here at 45, and he's not even a driver. I guess the oldest driver now is 41, 42, and he's not even a grandpa.
I think that it's a really good question, because I think about that a lot, and I've talked to people and thought, you know, right now when I look at the field of young drivers and young people coming into the sport, as young as they are at the level and the talent, the job that they're doing, I think that the sport's in a better position than it's ever been with new talent. And when I look at that, I think, well, is that because of the way, you know, is it easier up now with whether it's go-karts or Legends cars, or is it the iRacing? What is it? But we see we see drivers like, you know, Chase Elliott and William Byron, Alex Bowman, Eric Jones, you know, Bubba Wallace. You look at these and you realize, wow, the average age of the winner with Blaney and Chase last night, I don't know, was 22 years old, something like that. So I think that NASCAR is right now in the best position that it's been in several years, with, you know, not that we haven't got 2 or 3 young drivers at a time, but now, you know, you got 6 or 8 young guys that are talented and can easily win. And I think that says a lot about the path up and the fact that a lot of young drivers still have interest in getting here.
Time for one more here.
KellyCrandallRacer.com. For any or all 3 of you, I guess depending on who you ask, the Daytona 500 is either really hard to win or a race that anybody could win. During your careers, when you came down here, how did you feel pulling into this place when it came to trying to win the Daytona 500?
Well, I'm going to let them talk, because I've only won it twice. They've won it 7 times. So
It's a lot different now with the restrictor plates and stuff. So if out of the 40 cars that's starting, there's probably 30 of them that's capable of winning a race under the right circumstances. And used to, when we come down here, there was 10 or 12 cars, and those were the only ones you had to worry about. So all that stuff has changed. I think you know, it winds up being, most of the time, the majority of the guys that win have been winning before. But then you look back, somebody that's running 5th or 6th that's never finished in the top 20. So you don't never know. Circumstances beyond anybody's control. So it's a pretty wide open race, even though we're going to go with 8 or 10 people that we think is going to win the race or have a better chance than other people. But these guys sitting back there that's, you know, 25th or something like that, under the right circumstances and the right draft, they're capable of winning the race.
Yeah, this is it's just a different world from what it used to be, and he hit right on the point. You know, we used to come down here and knew the people we had to beat, and that's what we kind of concentrated on now. And there's some favorites in this one probably, but one little circumstance can change all that, and there's so many potential winners for this. And you know, it just out there in practice a while ago, there was a group of about 15 cars, and that the race can't get much better than that, you know. So I don't know, you know. Lee was down here and we won the race by 2 or 3 feet with and no cautions in 1959 at a speed of about 140 mile an hour, you know. And now they, what was it, 202 in practice today? That's do the math on that, you know. And but it's the same banking, same shaped track. Of course, the cars are a lot different. I'll give you that. But I don't know. You've got to be the first one there to be the winner, and that's what you work hard to do.
Well, clearly a lot of winners in this sport, but only a handful can really be called legends. And these 3 definitely fit the moniker that we have, Forever Legends. From the class of 2010, Richard Petty; class of 2012, Dale Inman; class of 2018, Ray Evernham. Thanks, guys, for your time. A couple of the next things coming up for the NASCAR Hall of Fame. The next nomination class will be announced the week of March the 5th on NASCAR America, and the next vote for the class of 2019, May the 23rd, the Wednesday before the Coke 600. A lot of other things going on between now and then, but appreciate your time and all your support from this last induction ceremony and the previous 8 before that. And if you have any questions, please reach out to any of us. We'll be happy to help you. Have a great Speed Weeks in 2018.
Thank you, crowd. Appreciate it. That ain't very far off.
Appreciate you.